So, hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. You can reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you have a guest that you think would be interesting, or you might be someone who wants to be on my podcast, I'd love to have you. And today, another great guest. The last two guests I've had have been phenomenal, and I think that Mark's going to be just as great. So, this is Mark Gammon with Cap America. For you that don't know, in my normal life, I sell promotional items, and hats, because I always wear a hat, is something I'm always a little passionate about. I've worn one since I was a kid, and I know it sounds kind of goofy, but it's just one of those things. I probably have 150 hats. So, Mark, thanks for being on my podcast. I know how valuable your time is running this large company, and I just love having you here. So,
always have time for you, Ed. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so I met Mark out in Palm Springs. I told you guys I went out there for what they call a power meetings, and we met with manufacturers of products, and they're trying to talk us into selling their product. And something that stuck out with Mark was how positive he was, because I had some experiences at that meeting where people weren't, they didn't have to be over the top excited to see me, but I'm very big into positivity. So if they were on the negative side of things, and I'll tell you a quick story, Mark, you don't even probably know this. We were at dinner one night during those meetings, and the conversation got very negative about all these containers in the ocean and all the problems they were having. And I'm like, you guys, I'd rather hear what you can do instead of what you can't do. We can't change that situation tomorrow, but anyway, your positive attitude was so inspiring to me, and that's why I remember you two more than I remember anybody else that was at that meeting, because of how uplifting you were and positive. And there is a bright future for everything, and we just need to stay on that thought process. Well, so tell me a little bit about Cap America.
So Cap America was founded in 1985. Phil Page founded it when he was 30 years old. Phil's still young. We've been in business for 37 years, and we've grown exponentially. We've quadrupled in size in about the last 10 years. And wow. Really, it comes down to the positivity statement, Ed. We just, we want people to be happy with product and service. We don't overthink things. We smile and sell caps, so positivity is a huge part of our culture here. And it's a huge part of our success.
Yeah. And you posted something on LinkedIn the other day that was lengthy, and I don't usually read things that are that long. Just because, that's social media, right? If it says see more, we don't click on it. But I was so encouraged by this, because you were talking about your employees, how they've overcome, these hurdles we've had during COVID in the last 18 months. And I hope that your employees saw this, because this means a lot as a leader. And we talk about leadership on here, and I'm going to ask you some questions about that in a little bit. We talk about leadership and how I was a manufacturer for many years, worked for gigantic companies in the construction industry. And they would take on projects like, the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, right? Stanford professor. And they kind of took on that model for their company. But what I had found out was it was only getting about halfway down the management stream, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens with that is now it's not effective, right? It's got to get down to not the most least person in your company, but I would say, the cleaning crew, or whatever you want to call the person that should be the least engaged. The whole idea is to get that down there. And this thing you posted on LinkedIn really I hope it got to your employees. I hope you put that on a newsletter or something too.
Yeah, they're involved, and they're very involved with what I do intentionally, Ed. It's we've grown because of them. It's funny, we just had our anniversary celebration for everyone this morning. So we pulled everyone into a room and gave 5-year, 10-year, 15-year. Awesome. And it's amazing to see the exuberance and excitement that people still have after years of doing it. It's because of involvement, right? Everybody's really involved. It's funny that you mentioned Good to Great. That's an unbelievable book. And part of the post happened to be with, really addressing uncomfortable issues a little, yes. Right? Because everyone is really saying, man, we need to be better people. And then all of a sudden, everyone's upset that their cap isn't in inventory and arriving next day. Well, there's always solutions for issues, 100%, right? We say this sometimes, and I say this tongue in cheek, but we don't have kidneys in boxes, we have caps, right? So it's a little less important, very important to us, very important to our client. but there's always a solution as long as you communicate and talk about it. So communication for us is everything internally for our clients and universally. I mean, communication is everything.
You know, I worked for Pepsi Cola years ago in the 80s as a young person, and somebody taught me a valuable lesson. They said, Ed, we sell sugar water. Okay. Don't get so wound up over, you know, brown sugar water, because, and you're right. Yes, it's important. And you guys, there's livelihoods here that are being affected, but yes, you do sell caps. But I get it. I'm going to get back to this message a little bit. This is what leaders don't do enough of. I read a book, Matthew Kelly they call him the dynamic Catholic, but before he was a dynamic Catholic, he has a business consulting service, him and two other guys, Fortune 100 companies. He's out there doing all kinds of great things. And he wrote a book called The Dream Maker. And if you haven't read that book, I would be glad to send you a copy. This book is phenomenal for businesses, but I have us going somewhere with all this, but it's so important to keep so he was talking about how many employees after about 10, 15 years, they stop working. They just keep collecting a check. And employees don't want to do that. They want to be part of the success. They want to be part of the system, because people don't quit their jobs. They usually quit bosses. Yeah. You know, I found that. So, I just, like I said, where did you, I was reading on I was creeping on you a little bit, reading your LinkedIn profile.
Creep away. And
found out you went to the Harvard Business School.
I took a class there. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Yep. How was that experience?
It's phenomenal. You know, we surround ourselves with people that challenge us, and that's how we grow. Right. So, it's just so nice how people at Harvard have so many eclectic backgrounds of people that I would never associate never have the opportunity to collaborate with. And it was just perspective was so invaluable for me to see. It was, just a great experience. It really shapes perception, you know, because you want to challenge yourself and be around things. And I think we all tend to get into that box, and running the company, it's a little bit different, you know, for feedback and to bounce things off. I go to the owner and his wife, we all collaborate, but I don't have a lot of sounding boards because I make most of the decisions. I empower departments to make decisions, but I don't have a lot of sounding boards. So getting outside of the walls and thinking creatively makes me do that, you know, and it really defines me as a better leader to continue to grow. You know, you talk about reading a lot. I love this conversation, Ed. That's how we continue to really change the way we mold. Like people in my position tend sometimes to really think they have things figured out. And I'm very confident in what I do, but I also realize that I have to grow for the company to continue to grow. And, you know, obviously the Harvard experience does that, and surrounding myself with people like yourself and distributors that are on the other side of the coin, right? We're suppliers, you're a distributor, and having these conversations, meaningful conversations on what we're doing wrong is important to me. Everybody can says, man, you guys are doing a great job. You're terrific, but what are we doing wrong? What can I improve on? I can never improve on you're awesome. I love to hear it. It's great. It's good for ego, but it doesn't do the company any good, right? I need to hear, like, where are we off track? And that's part of what that experience gave me, is really realize that to disrupt where you're going, to disrupt, you know, how you are status quo wise, you have to think outside, you know, just not outside the box, outside the realm of what you're doing. Everything's changing so quick, Ed. Like, you know, our business isn't the same business that Phil started 36 years ago. Right. And it's not the same company I took over 6 years ago. You know, it's a completely different company, and it's a better company. Like 5 years from now, it's going to be better than we are today because of the people here and continually trying to evolve. And that's how we do it, man, you know?
So I tell my kids and my listeners too, that I can tell you where you'll be in 2 years if you tell me what you're reading and who you're hanging out with. Yeah. And I read that in another book. But it's funny, I did a podcast about reading. I had this friend of mine. I went through this, my wife and I went through this life-changing physical transformation a couple of years ago, right? We decided we wanted to get over some limitations. And for me, getting up and speak, I wanted to be in ultimate, you know, physical shape too, so I could look the part, right? And COVID's taken care of some of that, gone backwards. But so I was talking to this guy, and he says, you know, every week I'd see him. He says, hey, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. And I said, you know, maybe you need to stop reading just for a minute and do some of the things that you've read. So he was going to the same trainer I was, but he was getting no results, zero results, because he wasn't changing his diet. He wasn't doing those things. So yes, I've read a lot of those books, but I've had to stop sometimes, like with Good to Great, and say, okay, could I be that level 5 leader? Now, personally, looking in the mirror, I'm not a level 5 leader. I don't have those, and that's okay, because any level leader is good. It's just the level 5 wasn't, I didn't want to be a level 5 leader, right?
Right.
And I could explain that to my listeners another time, but so I had to, dissect that book and find out where I fit into that. And it's not the only book in the world. I've tried to encourage my kids to read the book, but the first 3 chapters, if you remember, are all about numbers. And if you don't like numbers, you're not going to finish the book. But it makes sense when he gets back to, why he was looking at those numbers and why they did this experiment. Mark, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Columbia, Missouri. So I grew up right where Mizzou country, right in the central part of the state in Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
And good good family life, all that great. Everything
really
was
lucky,
perfect.
Ed. Absolutely a great childhood. So I had 2 older brothers, and I'm a twin. I had a twin brother, have a twin brother. My dad was an identical twin, so that was a little bit different. It's supposed to skip generations, so my parents tried to have a girl and had twin boys and quit. So I'm the reason why they quit having children, which I completely understand. But no, great childhood. My dad unfortunately had an aneurysm young. He was 48, so I was going into my senior year in high school. So I lost my father going into my senior year, and my mom had moved away to Iowa to be close to family, and I was a pretty good soccer player at the time. So I lived with friends, which was really a shaping experience for me.
Sure.
I had to be pretty responsible early, which, obviously losing my father was horrible, but it did shape my responsibility and path. And part of the reason why I'm in the position that I am today, I had to really grow up quick, and I did. So it's I miss him horribly, but it was the traumatic experience really set me on a path of positivity. And I tell you, Ed, I grew up pretty positive. The people that grew up with me, I'm the same guy I am today, I hope, that I was then. But yeah, I just had to be a little more responsible. Ended up going to Iowa to go to college, and went to William Penn. And then prior to here, I was on the distributor side. I worked for a large distributor for quite some time. And then I got wooed over to Cap America, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the owners are terrific, and the company is so they're ready. They're passionate about what we do. And if you have people that are passionate and you're passionate, good things happen.
Yeah. And so I was being facetious when I said a perfect life, because I talked about part of my like my 4 pillars of the podcast. One of them is storytelling, right? So I talk to people a lot of times about telling your story. You need to get out there, but there's 2 stories you can tell, right? You could have told this tragic, it beat me up, it did all these things. You could tell that story to people, and I always say I could tell you my life story, and you could cry or you can smile, right?
Yeah.
Because it depends on what you take out of it. So I lost my dad. I was 19 years old. My dad passed away.
Yeah.
And same kind of thing. It was like my mom was always real positive. And after I come from a family of 4 kids. And after my dad passed away, I got to spend a lot of time with my mom, just one-on-one, kind of getting to know her as a person, not just a mom, right? And took a lot of great leadership skills from her. And she was one of those quiet leaders, right? The ones you don't know are leaders until they're gone, right? And same thing, I just took that positive attitude and said, look, if I want these things in life, I'm going to have to work harder. And I got into good businesses and moved up and moved up and moved up and everything. But fast forward to now, about a year ago, probably right before we took that trip to Louisiana, I kind of said, I don't want to do all these things that everybody else wants me to do. I want to do some stuff on my own with this podcast, the speaking. I went out with Linda just because it's a fun business, right? When people get their product, they're always smiling. Not smiling as much today, but we just got to keep them smiling and know the only good, well, not only, the good part is everybody's in the same boat. It's not like, our company is failing our customers. It's just the business is failing a little bit right now, but it'll get we'll get over it.
Sure.
And we can sell what we got to sell. So yeah, I always talk to people about salespeople constantly forget to tell their story. Yeah, and that's what their customers fall in love with. So you got to get out there. I know when I was in the HVAC business, people used to say, I'd call them up and they'd say, I said, I met you here. And they'd say, I don't really remember. And I said, I'm the one with $7. And they go, oh my God, Ed, how you doing? You know, so I had that. That's my moniker, right? That's the guy with all the kids. And I have 14 grandkids now too.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But,
you know, it's funny
you
you
have
say
kids?
that. Oh, I'm sorry. I do. I have a 12-year-old. So Quinn, Mindy and I tried for quite some time and couldn't, and finally got really lucky. I'm an older father, you know, so, but he's fantastic. He's wonderful. Yeah, no, he's fantastic. Quinn James, he's terrific.
So funny, I'm raising a grandson and a granddaughter part-time. Longer story, but I won't get into that. So I have a 14-year-old here. So that's my oldest grandson. And thank God I'm not in a wheelchair or on crutches or something. I feel like sometimes I should be, but yeah, he's doing great. And I've been a parent for 35 years.
Yeah.
You know, and I was kidding with somebody the other day on Facebook. They put that they're not going to be one of those parents that stop parenting at 18. And I'm like, well, did I not check a box? Because I'm still parenting 35-year-old, and but I have some real successful kids, some kids that are in the middle doing their just living, and then a couple of kids that have struggled, but that's okay. We just work with what we got to work with.
100%.
Yeah. So here's one of the questions I always ask, and I think you have an answer for this, and most people don't, surprisingly. Have you ever worked for a really good leader in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, good leaders listen more than they talk, right?
Sure.
So I had, yeah, absolutely. And still do, to be honest with you. So yeah, I have. And leading by example, being compassionate and being understanding and intelligent, right? So the main thing that I've learned from leadership that I've learned the most from are the people that are humble and really know what they're doing, right? They're engaged, they're passionate, but they listen to everybody around them. It's kind of how I hire as well, and you get this too. I hire leaders within our company, and we've done a great job at finding people that are just extremely intelligent and team players. And it's important that people communicate well. What's on a resume is great. It's perfect, but it doesn't mean that you're going to fit in with the team mold and communicate the way you should and take and empower. So, we're in Fredericktown, Missouri, Ed. So we have a town of about 4,000 people, and we employ, at the end of the year, we'll be close to 400, right? So,
oh, wow.
So we're one of the largest employers in 4 counties. So finding talent it's difficult because we're rural, but it's also been very good to find really, really talented people locally that have grown within the company and now and take control of what they do. So part of what I did when I took over 6 years ago is have people own what they do. We have really intelligent people that can tell me what happens in their department. And for that reason, and our growth has been, we're the last 5 years, we're around a little over 40% in growth. And part of that is just people owning what they do and letting them do that, and so to answer your question in a 360 degrees, I absolutely had some good leaders going through the process. And that's why I lead the way I do today.
Surprisingly enough, several of my guests, when I ask them that, they kind of get, deer in the headlights look. They look back, and I have not been around a lot of great leaders. Mm-hmm. Some humble people that I, again, didn't realize until after they were gone. And said, wow, they really shaped me, from the things that they did. They weren't. So I guess it's that thing where they don't come out and say, I'm going to be a good leader today. You don't, it's just built into them, right? Mm-hmm. From doing those little stringing those, holy moments together, however you want to explain it. Matthew Kelly talks about that. None of the saints were born saints, well, too, but how they strung those little things together. And, in one of his books, he talks about just take a Friday out of the week and just for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 1 minute, just be the person that God wants you to be, or, the best version of yourself. And then you string that, and you keep doing that every other day, and then you do it every day. Then you start stringing. And that's what good leaders do. They string those good moments, those defining moments together. I'd always tell my employees when I was running a sales department, you got to be a person of possibility, right? You got to look at things and go, how can we get this done? You still got to think of cost. You got to think of all those things, but sometimes cost needs to go out the window just to get it done for those 10 sales down the road, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt I was one of those people that would go over and above. Whatever I had to do, I would do to get that sale. As
Well, I'll
long as
tell
I
you
was
one thing, Ed. Oh, I'm sorry.
good.
The one thing I'll just add to that is, and this sounds egotistical, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but I really don't think I've ever failed at anything. You know, I've made a ton of mistakes. But I have never ever, and part of it because I'm too persistent too, right? We're all too persistent to do that. And I think some leaders, even though they're talented, they just feel like if something goes wrong, they're derailed, right? There's nothing. I mean, you shape, you move, right? You adjust, you pivot, right? Pivot's been the word for the last couple of years, like pivot, pivot, pivot.
Yeah.
But if you haven't been pivoting for the last 15 years, the last 2 years really were difficult for you. If you're used to pivoting, the last 2 years weren't a big deal. You know, you just figure out how to make it work. And we did. Yeah.
It just blows me away. You just said that you've never failed it, because they talk about, you'll see those memes that say, if you haven't failed, you can't succeed. And I feel the same way. It's like, I really haven't failed at anything. If I stop doing something on a regular basis, it's because I needed to pivot. I needed to go to something else. So I don't look at that either. I don't look at anything in my life that was a failure. And I've been married a couple of times before I met my wife now, and we'll be married in 19 years after the first of the year. And I talk a lot in my podcast about expectations, right? We need to have clear expectations in a relationship. And people don't like talking about that. My wife and I did for 4 years before we got married, because we knew we had to make this work, right? We had all these kids. So our family's blended, but I just never think of it that way. I have 2 daughters that aren't mine biologically, but I've been around them, since they were little kids. So yeah, that's interesting. And when this whole, I get not frustrated, but I guess irritated when people say, "Oh, I'm just zoomed out, right? I can't do any more Zoom meetings." I'm like, are you kidding me? Zoom is the best thing that's ever happened in the world. I can talk to people. I can talk to you right now across the United States, and we go back to our work when we're done, right? So when we started Zooming, I got a green screen, I got mics, I got lights, I got all this stuff, because I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to look professional when I do it. And yeah, you just have to make changes and my whole life has just been about making changes. Right? I just don't sit still. We had a reunion Saturday night, 35 years since I worked at Pepsi, and we had a reunion with Pepsi people.
That's wonderful.
And it was so funny that a lot of the guys, unfortunately, are still doing the same exact thing they were doing back then. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh my God, Ed, what do? You do this and you do that." And I'm like, dude, I can't sit still, man. I got to get out there and do something new, meet new people, read books, do whatever I got to do.
Yeah.
So no, I really, and I knew as soon as I met you, I knew we were going to have some chemistry. And so the other thing that I asked my guests is if you ever had a teacher that stuck out in your life.
I have. Yeah, I have. And it was in college. Dr. Biggs was his name. And he was just, and it goes back to being so intelligent and humble. And I keep on going back to that. But I mean, the guy was off the charts smart, like super, super intelligent. But he just never, he was always there to listen and guide, not to force, right? I mean, it was just, it was fluid. And it makes an impression on you, it really does. And he was very, very encouraging, very positive, even when things weren't that positive or encouraging. And I was fortunate, Ed, school was, it came fairly easy, and not that easy. I mean, I work hard, and work ethic leads into how that works, right? So I was never really worried about that, but really being engaged with somebody one-on-one isn't an easy thing to do, especially when teachers feel there's a difference between the teacher-student relationship. It's a little like in business, right? So, and I see it a lot. I'll call somebody in the office and I'll say, "Can you come to my office?" And there's that pause, like there's something wrong, right? Like there's nothing wrong. I want to talk about things, right? And so it's just one of those, when a teacher really looks at students as a peer and somebody that has talent, it makes a difference. It doesn't always have to be that stratification between teacher student. It can be teacher student, but there can be respect and confidence that maybe that student has something to give at the same time. Same in business.
I lost a job once, and I feel like looking back that I just became like the face of this company instead of the owner, because I was out there all the time, right? But that's what they hired me to do, right? They hired me to get out there and be that person. And when he stopped getting phone calls and I started getting them, because they knew I'd get stuff done. Not that he wouldn't have gotten it done. It was just my whole job was to get out there and sell, right? So when I was, he started to get, I think that bothered him and that was the sign to me of a leader that he was a little insecure about some things. And I've run into guys like that before. But I tell you, my son, I really believe that he's probably the smartest person I've ever met. I don't know how he got it, but me and his mom are too smart. He can figure out anything.
Yeah.
And he has a master's degree and he works in cybersecurity. And he's just one of these people that can just figure out anything. He has a nice family. He wants to have a nice conservative family. He's actually moving to Texas here after the first of the year to follow his company. But yeah, he has some, and a lot of my kids have this amazing intelligence, and a lot of it has to do with technology and things like that that's come along. I hear people all the time say, man, I wish we were back in the 70s. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need polyester clothes and dial phones and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we're almost going to wrap this up. I could probably talk to you for hours, but I don't ever write anything down for these things because I want them to be really organic and natural.
I love it.
So I'm going to get back to this one more time. I'm going to go back to this LinkedIn thing. Do you guys have a newsletter or anything you guys do?
We do. Yeah, we do it every month. It comes directly from HR. Absolutely.
You should put this in a newsletter.
Thank you.
And you were talking about just people just getting over hurdles, right? And talking about how special the people that you go work. And you guys have built something that's pretty special there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, just from talking to you. So anyway, we will wrap this up because I know you need to get back to work, and maybe I do something structured next time and we have a little bit more time to chat. But Mark, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. I think you just gave us a bunch of valuable information. This whole podcast was built around helping younger people get over hurdles that they, maybe they had a rough life, maybe they had, and the whole point is we all have rough lives. We all have things we need to get over. And our self-esteem is probably the lowest it's ever been in the history of America. Suicide is up. And I want to reach out to these young people, basically put my arms around them, electronically and say, look, it's going to be okay. Find something you love to do. Work hard. We keep hearing that, work hard, work hard, work hard. And people go, they want to resist it so badly, right? But that's always the key, right? This is working hard, being consistent and loving what you're doing and building those relationships and things like that. Sales will always be a relationship business. Mm-hmm. And as much as all my friends write sales books, I say, I could write a sales book in one page, which I think I'm going to do actually, because we overthink sales. It's very much making a call with the intent to have a new friend and then fixing whatever's ailing them. They either want something so it adds pleasure to their life or takes away pain, one or the other.
Yeah.
Super simple. Do you have any, have you ever done any public speaking?
I do, not motivationally, although I've been tempted to do it and been asked to do it. But obviously I do as the leader of the company here. So I run very large meetings and truly enjoy it. I think it's my time to inspire and share, and you're talking about youth, it's so important that you know that if you find passion, there's always, it's never, things aren't that bad. I've been on my own since I was 17, literally, Ed, and I'm doing great. It's funny, I'll give you a 2-second story, but my dad's family's great. My uncle was a veterinarian and he's retired and I love him very much. Terrific people. So they came down and I've done pretty well, which is great. And they're standing in my kitchen and he said, Mark, why aren't you an axe murderer? And it's just like, cause I don't have a sob story. I've been very lucky for the reasons why things happened in my life. And I've never really had a sob reason to be upset about anything. Like I just, it really being alone and on my own early has, it just defined me. Right. So it's motivated me. It's brought me passion and reasoning. And, my wife and I have been together for 25 years. I outkick my coverage. She's fantastic. She's probably my best teacher ever. She keeps me extremely humble and she's wonderful. But I don't have a sob story at all. I really don't. And that's part of like, man, if there's anything we can do for youth and kids, and I'll support you 100%, Ed. Yeah. Happy to help you whenever. But yeah, there's too much to look forward to right now. Things are too exciting to be upset about stuff.
Well, two of the I work with two nonprofits, and we're using my podcast as a springboard. And what these nonprofits do, one of them is really helping kids learn human skills, right? Harvard, MIT, they've all come out with reports recently that they're graduating these genius kids, but they can't shake someone's hand. They don't understand the power of a relationship, their emotional intelligence, their problem solving. Some of those things they really don't teach educationally. The other one I have, and I don't know if you know what Discord is, which is basically a gaming platform for kids. I didn't either, and so when the guy asked me, "Do you know what Discord is?" I said, "I know what it means," and
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a little link that's a little cartoon, 3-minute cartoon thing. And what it is, it gives the kids ability, maybe high risk kids or kids that just, or even an adult that has, doesn't maybe know Excel. Maybe someone, when I was running the Poway Chamber of Commerce, there was a lot of companies that said, I want to be a cook. So they opened a restaurant, but they don't know anything about, shrinkage and all these, I said the difference between you knowing Excel and giving all your receipts to your accountant's about $2,500 a year. If you could send them that in an account, So this Discord platform, these people can go on and get a mentor or a lesson in Excel or whatever, and they can do it all on their phone. So a kid could go on there and start, getting a mentor. Maybe he wanted to learn about finances, what's his personal finance. He could go on there and talk to a financial person, and they could guide him, not give him, just kind of give him advice. And it's really built for kids, like I said, that aren't college bound. Not every kid is going to succeed in college. We just know that. Maybe they can't afford it. Maybe, well, if they keep paying for it, they'll keep going. But they're coming out of college going, okay, now I have a degree, but I don't even know what to do. And it's not even what I want to do sometimes. So that's something that I want to go. When I was talking about when we started going to this trainer and working with him, the guy, we had some serious tragedies in our life, like television movie tragedies that just happened to happen. And he says, how do you get out of bed every day? And I said, well, because I have other people counting on me, right? I need to get out of bed and go. And whether those things, I hear a lot of people saying, I can't believe this is happening to me. A friend of mine was going through a divorce and he calls me and says, man, Ed. And I said, dude, what's wrong? He says, everything's going wrong. Man, my son's car broke down. My ex-wife is doing this. I said, your son's car didn't break down because you did something. It's a piece of crap. That's why it broke down. Right. And sometimes things aren't happening to us, they're happening around us, and we start to own those problems. And when we start owning those problems, we create more problems. Right.
Yes. Yes.
So what is the now I'm going down another track, right? I'll get you out of here in a second.
No, you're good.
What is the average age group of your employees? A lot of younger people?
It is, yeah. So among leadership, I would say it's in the mid 30s. And then production wise, it's a little bit lower than that. So early 30s. We've got, we've been in business for 36 years, almost 37. So we have a wide gamut, but that's the concentration. We actually have a really young leadership team, which is exciting for us.
Oh,
I'm
that's
the
awesome.
old guy. Yeah.
How do they, have you found that younger people have different priorities as far as their relationship? So I come from, if you do your job, I'll let you keep it, right? In the 80s,
Yeah.
right? If you don't do your job, you're fired.
Yeah.
Now it's, the joke is that we're too coddling, right? There's got to be that mix between you do have a job to do. We agreed. We had expectations when you started here and you had expectations from us. But if you're having some problems, let me know so I can, so we can work through those things.
Yeah.
Do they have more of that attitude?
They do. And so when I took over here, Ed, the previous president had been here for a while, 15 years, and it was a little bit of the older style of management, right? And so it's a culture shift when you try to first of all, when you try to empower departments and get people to make decisions when they historically haven't. It sounds like it's pretty easy. It's not that easy. It takes years to really get people comfortable with making decisions, because that involves confidence and responsibility and how all that works. And the younger generation here, they communicate pretty well. So it's my son's generation. I have the same fears as you. I'm like, my son is brilliant. He's super. Like, Quinn, you need to look somebody in the eye when you're shaking their hand, right? Mm-hmm. That's a concern eventually on how that works. And everyone here, obviously I get more texts than I get phone calls. But texts are okay as long as you're communicating effectively. We really try to pick up the phone now. It's a lost art, and it really, Ed, it's unbelievable. Somebody will come into my office and they'll say, we have this issue. It's going on. And I look at the email chain and it's 25 emails. I'm like, have you picked up the phone yet? Right. So I'll pick up the phone with them and we'll make a call and we'll solve it in like 3.5 minutes. Our company policy here is yes. And the reason is because our client's important to us here, so let's figure out a solution and move, and just continue to move. And I think the younger generation is good at that. I don't think they're as good as picking up the phone and getting that personal connection and talk, like, exactly like we're doing today. So there's a mix of it. We're pretty lucky here. The talent is it's there for us to make a real good run. We just sat and looked at projections and it's looking pretty good, but it depends on us communicating with you and with our clients effectively. And that takes interpersonal communication, which, can be a lost art, especially when somebody like my son's age, when they're, they're on the Xbox, and they've got headphones on, but when it comes to being personal and shaking a hand and having a conversation, it's a little different.
And it's funny, my grandson, because he's around us a lot, my wife and I'm obviously a talker, so when we go to church, he'll walk around and kind of work the whole area. He knows everybody and he's a very good communicator. When I take him to parties or whatever, because if I have a party to go to and I have him, he's going with me. It's just what it is, right? If you don't want kids, I won't come. But he's very good at communicating like that. I found that I went to work for a company and they really wanted to change their culture, but the owners didn't. Right? The owner hired me, but didn't want to change. And I said, he had a collage of pictures in the lunchroom that was when they used to go fishing and they used to do all these, volleyball games at the beach and all this stuff. And he didn't do it anymore. And I said to him, the first thing I would do is put that away, just hide it, because people are looking at that going, oh, that's how it used to be here. And then they go back and do nothing and hardly work.
Yep.
I said, you either got to change back to that or you got to eliminate it. And and that's what I'm finding when I do talk to companies. They don't want to change. They just want to change the culture of the other people, but they're looking at, they're looking at you. They're looking at what you do in life. They're looking at your personal attitude and how you're handling things, just like a parent. And then that gives them. And the other thing, I was talking to, I did a podcast on this where younger people, and this is forever, they don't want to make decisions. They don't want to be wrong.
Right.
Right. So a bad decision or a wrong decision, if it's like you said, if it's just for a hat, I mean, that's how you learn, right?
Exactly.
Right. So sometimes I would encourage people that were working for me, just make the decision.
Yeah.
And if it didn't work out, then we just change course, right? We just change a little bit.
Yeah.
But I want you to have that. I want you to be empowered to be able to say, yeah, Ed's not here. I'm just going to do this. So you're right. I mean, that the way they're communicating in that, and the 25 emails, I laughed at that because it usually was just a phone call. Right. And the company that I was dealing with was called Green Heck Fans. They're probably $1 billion company now. This guy just skyrocketed. His theory in life was to keep it simple, right? Let's make our customers really easy to do business with.
Yep.
And if you really believe in that, and I can tell you from the samples I've ordered, you guys have made it really simple. Great communication. Everything's happened. They should be here this week. You're doing a great job. And I can tell that your company is going to flourish just because of what you're doing. And there's the owner of the company. He's older than you.
He is. Yep. Phil's 67. He started the company and he's terrific. He supports what I do. And that's a big part of,
yes.
He's all in, we're investing. It'd be really easy for us to sit back on our heels, put our feet up on the desk. And he's not that way at all. He'll tell you that I run the company and he just comes in at 2:00. That is not true. We exchange emails. I'll send him an email at 7 a.m. He sends it back at 7:05. Like we collaborate very well, but it's a very fortunate position for myself and the company. Talking good to great, I took over a good company and we're making it great. Right.
Nice.
And we're just on this path like this, and it's very supportive from an investment and just an emotional time. We're all investing in what we're doing and we're passionate about it. And that's it. And the passion runs, the company takes my personality, right? It all comes from the top and goes down, but it's the same with departments. So departments are the same way. It molds, especially when they make decisions. It depends on the leader of the department on how that really transcends. And we're lucky to make the right choices to people, lead departments, make decisions, and really be passionate and empathetic to their employees. And it works well because if you're empathetic to employees and they're really happy about coming here, that comes down to you, to distributors, to everyone that's really happy doing business with us. It's not rocket science. Like, let's be good humans and sell more caps, period.
Yeah, 100%. And and I'm telling you, you're buying you can't train that loyalty, right? You can't hire that loyalty. You have to develop that. And that's what you guys are doing. Well, Mark, I tell you, you're awesome. I hope we can continue to have some, consistent relationship here and there. I am going to send you that book because this book to me is one of the most brilliant things. I tell you, I'm almost tempted. I probably shouldn't say this publicly, to find out if this theory is trademarked, because if it's not, I would be super interested in starting a company to do what this book has in it. And I'll send it to you, and I'll keep you on there.
Please, I appreciate you too, Ed. We will keep in contact, brother. Your energy is it's just awesome, man. It's contagious. So I appreciate you, man.
So stay on for just a second. Let me close this out. So this is the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. Mark Gammon was my guest today with Cap America. Awesome guy. You guys need to listen to this podcast and share it, please. Share. You can reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. And again, I welcome your feedback. I'm looking for guests, and anything you guys can do to help me out, I'm here to help you out too. So have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.